All right, we've spent a week full of fangirling and recommendations. Today, let's get into a little lesson.
In the final minisode this week, we're going to talk about the three main types of stories and how it's reflective of our internal states.
We're talking leadership this week, and one of the organizations we are so proud to be at the helm of is the Neuroencoding Institute.
We got to co-found the Neuroencoding Institute alongside Dr. Joseph McClendon III, amazing world-renowned neuropsychologist and incredible mentor and teacher. If you're at all interested in learning more about what the Neuroencoding Institute does and what it can do for you, please visit neuroencoding.com.
You're enjoying this episode on Angel Phoenix Productions Podcast Network. To explore a complete lineup of quality programs and media production services, head on over to angelphoenix.com or like our Facebook page at facebook.com/Angel Phoenix Productions.
All right, fellow family, we are back at it again today with another mini-sode. We've got a good one for you today as we're going to talk a little bit about the three main types of stories and how you might see them at play in your life.
What's amazing is that now, once you know this, you will never unknow it, and you will start to see stories and be able to start classifying which one of these three things it is. Now, what we know about a story is there has to be some kind of presence of conflict or tension in order for there to be any kind of resolution, relief, celebration, story, right? There's these 7 parts of the story. You have the introduction, and then you have the challenge, and you have the peak, you have the climax, you have the lesson at the end. But right now we're talking about something even more macro than that, and that's these three main types of conflict found within a story. So you've got man versus man, or person versus person, right? This is where someone has a foe and the foe is another person. We have man versus nature, or person versus nature, right? I'm in the storm and I'm on the boat, or I'm struggling to survive in the jungle. And then we have man versus self, or person versus self, an internal character conflict, or an internal precipice where we have to make a choice. But those are the three main types of conflict, and any story that has any kind of conflict or challenge is going to fall into one of these three categories.
What's interesting about this, as we start to look at the work that we do in the Neuroencoding Institute with Joseph McClendon, is that Joseph's definition of psychology is your beliefs about yourself, others, and the world around you. And your psychology creates your mindset, which creates your feelings, which create your actions, which create your life, right? As we think, so we feel. As we feel, so we do. As we do, so we have. And so when this waterfall happens, usually there's an internal story going on that's influenced by your psychology that is all really built around these three things, which we then see reflected in the, I think, written and curated psychology that we get to engage in when it comes to story.
Right. Well, our psychology ends up being what are the stories we tell ourselves about those three things and our relationship to them, to ourselves, to the people around us in the world at large. What are the three things that we can have conflict with? Ourselves, the people around us, and the world at large. And then we also think about this from a spiritual perspective. If that spirit presence inside of us is, we only have three options for what it can engage with and focus on. And guess what? It's what's happening internally, right? Ourselves. It's the people around us, and then it's the environment. So we see this reflected in all kinds of different ways. And so it makes sense that our stories would reflect this back to us. And once we know that, as we said in the beginning, you can't really unknow it. So it's even yesterday, my husband and I are watching the Ring of Power, the new Amazon Lord of the Rings show, and we were laughing because of the three storylines. We literally had one example of each. We were like, oh, look, here's man versus nature. Oh, look, here's man versus man. Oh, we've got a man versus self conflict happening, and how those differences of conflict and those differences of challenges can also give us the variety of a story of keeping our character development and our intrigue open.
Well, as if you've ever seen Futurama, you may know that now that you've seen it, you can't unsee it. You will never be able to look at a story the same way again without taking this psychology analysis to it and saying, what am I witnessing here? But we would invite you to maybe do a flip on that to yourself. Where are you telling stories where it's you versus you? Where are you creating meaning where you're creating a conflict with another person? Where do you feel like the world is against you? And can you unwind those beliefs to maybe create a better story for yourself and ultimately create a better life? And we hope that you've loved this reading week here on the Kay and Shy Show as much as we have, because we brought this one to you with so much love from your sisters, Kay and Shy.
This podcast was a production of Angel Phoenix Productions. Explore more episodes of this show or other great shows on the Angel Phoenix Podcast Network by visiting angelphoenix.com. The views expressed in this show do not necessarily represent those of Angel Phoenix Productions or its advertisers and may contain language that's unsuitable for younger listeners.